Tons of drop frames right out the gate. Hopefully the connection stabilizes a bit. Hmm. There we go. I'm recording to my desktop at the same time as I'm recording this, or streaming rather. That way I can upload a high quality video later after the stream is over. That way I don't lose anything. That was one of my big issues with actively going live streaming was inconsistent bandwidth. Like, our internet's fast here, don't get me wrong, but as an example for like right now, I've had streams where I've had 0 drop frames, and then I have streams like this where you drop frames even immediately after I start streaming. And it could be something, in a setting, but I'm pretty convinced it's actually the internet connection. And we're not like using it crazy hard right now or anything either. I'm like the only one really pulling anything down off the network. I don't have any other downloads going. So I don't know what the fuck. Greetings, welcome to 2025. I am your host, Dark Mage, and I haven't done any active game dev in a while because I've been overhauling the fuck out of my desktop. I swapped from Ubuntu to Debian, for instance, and one of the reasons I did this is I decided to go ZFS. This isn't really a game dev thing, but ZFS is a file system, powerful one. And there's some cool things about it right out the gate that I think are really cool and worth, actually exploring. See that something wants me to sign in. There we go. Just updating some settings on the stream before I continue talking and shit. Okay, drop frames are going down, so that's good. Everything looks kind of gravy. For some reason, whenever I go live, YouTube is defaulting me to entertainment for some reason. Should be science and technology. Okay, so welcome to 2025. I am your host, Dark Mage. So let's see, I should pull up the chat. I'm not going to put chat on the video though. But so I migrated to ZFS because I've got like a fuck ton of storage now, right? I've got 2 1 terabyte drives, and I've always thought the idea of like ZFS mirroring, or rather before that raid is very interesting. So I've always wanted to fuck with that, and I decided now's the time. I've got the time, and I did it. So over the course of like a week or so, I did research. I did a install of ZFS root on Debian in VirtualBox first as an experiment. Then I did my laptop, and then I did my main desktop. And I'm even converting my external hard drives over to using ZFS because it's very, very powerful, and I like what you can do with it. And unifying all of my devices to use ZFS, I think would be a good idea. So I'm doing that, and now I've kind of mostly completed. It's now time to get back to business. I've got many bug bounty projects that I'm working on. I've got the game, of course, that we're going to work on right now. But in addition to that, as you can see in my, which direction is it? Is that right? It's, that way, over there. Yeah. I got to redo my fucking monitors when I move, dude. Jesus. I don't want to fuck with it lately because I'm about to. In addition to all this shit, I'm gonna be getting a new place to live here pretty soon, and on top of that, I'm also applying to go to doctoral school, grad school, for my PhD. Because it's high time I actually start doing some real shit, and I like the infrastructure that university offered me, or how when I enjoyed my time there, and some of my favorite people were professors in the department, and the original plan out the gate was to do this anyway. So we'll say that I took like a 18-year segue into the industry to level up, get experience, and now that I have that experience, it's time to get that paper on my own. I was pushed into the college direction as a child, which was a good thing, because I didn't have the computational infrastructure to give me any real direction. Um, I knew I enjoyed programming, and I always wanted to hack, but I was too afraid to. My mom had gone to prison for like almost 10 years or something like that, and I didn't want to do anything that could get me in trouble. So rather than exploring hacking as a teenager, I spent a lot of time invested in programming and learning how to code. But more than actually building things, my brain, just because I like languages, has spent a lot of time getting pretty strong with syntax. So syntax, blah blah blah. Dude, be like, okay, what can I do with this? And more often, I was just completing assignments way faster than my fellow classmates, and even to a point where my teachers were running out of material for me. It would get frustrated and say, I would say, teacher, what do I do next? I'm bored. I did all the stuff. It was easy. Give me more. And the teacher would go, just fucking go around the class and see if anyone needs help. And I said, okay. And somehow out of this, I've spent the majority of my career tutoring people. Interesting. So, but realizing what I'm able to do, like now, and then I began to realize this maybe about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But I got to get something fully built. I got to get something more fully built than the small So, where are we at? I'll show you some of the changes I just made, and we'll do some more changes. So, am I going to explain what I did here? See, tutoring is easy because you give someone an infrastructure like myself in the form of a problem or some sort of target solution that has to be made. It's like, okay, well, now we have a real thing to do. But it's also another to be the person creating the infrastructure. In other words, a designer saying like this, or I want this thing to do this, or I want this thing to behave in this way. And I have to play both parts. So not only am I the designer, I am also the builder. And I've spent a lot of time learning how to build. So once you know what you want to build, that's cool. Question is, what do we build? And in the beginning, the dream was an RPG. And this dream was based off of a combination of things. NetHack for one, Dwarf Fortress for another, and all of the old Super Nintendo RPGs that I played growing up. Top down, tile based RPGs, 2D. I'm like, okay, I want to make something like this. I think that's easily achievable, if only requiring massive amounts of time and patience. So, what did I do? This is some basic cleanup. As I'm iterating over the existing state of the game, making decisions on what the code should look like. Because if the code looks good, the game will look good. And if it gets to a point where development is ever so complicated or cumbersome that it's not immediately clear what the next step in the process is, then we have to backstep and reassess our initial preconceptions, such as how something works or how it should work or what the code should look like. And in the beginning, too, here, getting things working, one thing that we want to do is do proofs of concept first for a new feature or a new idea. And then we want to iterate upon the code in a way where the code fits neatly into the existing infrastructure, and that the code that was written when called is called in a way that fits nicely in terms of potential one-linedness, for instance. In other words, we want to package things into functions. And a lot of what is organized in libgamec are functions, as an example. Each of these sprites has a number of different frames, right? So for instance, let's run the game, actually. I gotta window capture again. Hold on. There we go. So as an example, the idle animation, certain number of frames, right? I think it's like 4. And or it might be, no, the idle animation is like 8 or 12 or something like that. But like the walk animation's 4, the attack animation's 4, so on and so forth. So draw entity increment frame handles that animation. So, or it's part of handling that animation. So for instance, let's find where this function is called. That gets called in draw entity. So you can think in terms of iterating over all the different entities in the game, or like that are present on the screen or in the scene. You can think in terms of for each entity in that set. Here's what we do: we grab the sprite group for that ID and a default specifier of none. Specifiers are a solution created to a problem where there are different numbers of sprites for a given entity. So, for instance, the buckler could have multiple representations. Has a representation on the player as well as on the field or in like a menu or something like that. So that's why we have specifiers. We're not heavily using them yet, but they exist. So first we grab the sprite group, which is the set of sprites for a given entity. And then we actually, even before that, we draw the shadow for the entity, which is a completely separate function. So draw entity shadow does a lot of the same stuff that draw entity does, but the difference here is that the way that entity shadows are stored in the sprite group for a given entity is that they are interwoven with the regular sprites. So, as an example, the idle animation might sit at like position 0, but then the shadow for the idle animation would be at 1. And you might even argue that it would be more logical to put the shadow first since it gets rendered first. I could even go back and reorder how we load things in order to handle that. So cold weather been fucking my breathing up here, man. God damn. Let's see. So here's where sprite first gets drawn, depending on like what frame you're currently on and where on the screen the sprite happens to need to go. Um, That's where spray gets drawn. So immediately after we draw the spray, we increment the frame for the spray. So if it's got multiple animation frames, it will increment its internal counter to the next frame. And then if we have the debug panel on, we can do a bunch of stuff like one of the things I do is I draw two boxes, and these boxes are important boxes because the way that the guy who made the sprites packaged them decided this probably was a smart idea that there needed to be amount of padding from the edge of the sprite to a certain boundary, maybe like the length of one width of the sprite. If you could see, it's the outer box is about times the size of the actual sprite itself. So like for an 8x8 sprite, you've got a 24x24 box. So this can be useful for making sure that, in case an animation happens to step outside of that 8x8 zone, for instance, like that. Good solution. Now, some of the other sprites in the pack are much bigger, and I'm going to have to figure out ways to handle them as well. One of the reasons I was considering remaking this game as a real-time game was to be able to handle that. But realistically speaking, I'm a problem solver. And I feel like I'm up to the task to handle some of the sprites that are larger than 8x8. But we're going to have to get there first. So yeah, this was a lot of cleanup. Like I did a lot of different things here. I'm just going to say updates. Okay, so what's next? What are we doing today? What are we doing right now? Test enemy placement might be nice. Okay, so let's instantiate the build loop. First, I unalias ls. Then I list all of the .c files. Then we pipe them into a program called enter with the -s flag. And the command that we want to run is just going to be make and even before that, we're going to do make clean. Oh, we don't have enter installed, so I have to install it first. Like I said earlier, I migrated to a new system. So every so often, I'm going to run into commands that I remember that I actually did not have. Oh, that's weird. The drop frame count on OBS decided to just disappear. Interesting. I should get screen key working again. So that, but at the same time, can't type passwords with that. You know what? Let's see. Screen key, right? Mhm. Yeah, it's not showing shift. Oh, it kept my settings from a long time ago. That's fucking awesome. Okay, nice. Okay, that looks good. Um, Hi, babe. I see you. Let me get something actually done here, and we'll chill out. That's cool. It actually recognizes caps as escape because of my modifiers that I've gotten my ZSH RC. That's fucking good. You ready to try out test enemy placement? Um, I was in the middle of setting up a loop. All right, so there's our build loop. So now, to show that it works, look at that. It just instantly shows back up and the change is applied. So now, no, just because the window closes doesn't mean the application is ever actually fully closing. Due to the way that everything works, closing the library requires closing the window as a result of closing out Raylib and then reopening it. And I've previously explored uh I've previously explored like making it so that the window could be persistently open because I think that would make a better viewer experience. But at the end of the day, the re-engineering I feel like may not, or the retooling may not necessarily be worth the legwork. It might be, and I might re-explore that. I'm not going to do that right now though. Um, man, my command sequences are must be crazy, but that's the fun of them. Um, so enemy placement. Let's test it. Uh oh, crash. Undefined symbol. Lib game handle enemy test enemy placement. Undefined symbol. Yeah. Oh, test enemy placement. Um, that's what's the difference? Oh yeah, we never did. Um, When I realized too that yeah, you're not going to be able to see the full sequence. Um, there we go. Let's see. Okay. Oh snap! We got our first enemy. Now what's interesting is that I'm placing them on top of the hero, and I'm able to walk through them at the moment. It's not exactly intended behavior. Um, let's see how test this. The old version, I was placing them to the right of the hero, and there was also like collision detection going on where you wouldn't be able to move into them. So it's a good start. Might as well check in. Okay. So why is the dude still able to move through? We're gonna dive into the Lua. Um, that's right. The original movement that we were doing was actually something that does this. So tiles can have one or more entities on the tile, but it could only have one hero or one NPC at a time. I don't plan on having multiple entities occupy the same tile unless an entity is dead, in which case the entity is no longer an NPC. It would be like a corpse or something. So, and the reason being, you want to be able to walk on top of tiles and pick up items. So, when moving, what originally was happening, I'm going to have to rewrite, is instead of simply doing an XY update, like X plus plus or Y plus plus, and then repositioning the entity on the screen based off that, what we actually are supposed to be doing is moving the entity from the contents of a tile's entities list to another tile's entities list. And then when we're drawing things in the dungeon, what we're actually doing is iterating over each of the tiles, because tiles have to get drawn first anyway. But when we're drawing an individual tile, we can take a look at its entities list and see all the items in it are all the entities, including any NPCs or hero, and draw each of those things in order and then move on to the next tile. This way makes drawing a lot easier, because I remember running into a problem where determining the order of drawing things was weird. And like if a if a tile had a bunch of items on it, and you had those items in your entities list and they all have the same position, um, how do you determine what order to draw things in, right? Um, when I was working with C++ and certain things, like I had to start finding ways to guarantee orders, and this is going to happen again here. So instead of simply updating this, what we're actually going to want to do is move from a tile to another tile. So we have a dungeon floor. Actually, the dungeon floor should no longer sit out here. Other entities. I don't think we're going to be using, I don't know if we're going to use action results or how we're going to be doing that exactly. Hopefully that doesn't break anything. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we originally commented out add entity to tile. So we need to uncomment that. Take a look at that code. So if the row exists in the dungeon floor and exists at the YX, we add it. When moving an entity, remove, that's entity pickup. But the entity move, go gadget, copilot. Um, All right, that looks good. Okay, the stream's starting to flatten out. We're like down to 6.6% drop. At the very beginning, we were getting like 60%. Like I said, I'm recording this locally now, so I should be able to upload something a lot more high quality later. Nice. Entity with ID -1. Huh. What the heck happened there? Um, oh, oops. That's why that was breaking. It didn't actually create the hero. What? Adding entity with ID 1 to tile 1 1. But he's not even showing up anymore. That. What the fuck? Why would adding the entity to the tile cause him to disappear? Oh, he's. Oh, it's weird. So the creation function never actually returns. Because this part's not getting printed out. To add entity to tile isn't. We wanted to get really granular with this. We could. What's really weird about this is it's not even getting past. Like, it's not even printing anything after that. The printing to add any to tile. But then something's going wrong between here and here. What do y'all think it is? Uh, I don't know that it actually does this. What the hell? What is the print? Yeah, it's lowercase print. Okay. Okay, we got it. We fixed it. Um, it returns nil. Are you fucking kidding me? That's a big gotcha in Lua. Holy shit. Attempting to insert a value into a non-existent table doesn't give us any error. Really? Yes. What are you doing? What was I saying? Um, and Mark Zuckerberg said some shit on fucking Joe Rogan that really hit home. Dude be like, I was always better at coding than I was at talking to people. Yeah, I fucking feel that. What was that doing? Oh yeah, entities moving from tile to tile. So what we have to do next is fix how we're drawing things. So this draws the dungeon floor technically. We're actually going to want to draw the entities in this function now. As you can see, we're not drawing the hero anymore. But like I was describing earlier, we want to actually draw the... Oops. We actually want to draw after we draw the tile, right? So we need to get num entities on tile, right? We need to get we have to have an entity index, and we're going to need to get the entity ID. Um, Flip game Lua, get num entities on tile. It doesn't think it exists. Oh, it's num entities at. No, that's not right. Wait, is it? No, wait, get entity at. Is that right? Yeah, see, that's not quite right. Close. See, that's the power of Copilot. It just generated that big chunk. It generated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 3, 24. It just dropped 25 lines of code on me. Most of them, and it's syntactically correct, and the only error that it made is that it called a function that doesn't exist. So libgame get int entity at is what we want to use. Get int entity at. Instead, it's going to be does it have to be JI? No. Is that right? Yeah. This gets us the tile. This gets us the entity in that list. Um, all right. It built. Let's run it. Now he's not animating anymore. Um, and the shadow's not getting drawn either. So we're gonna have to tweak this code a bit. Um, isn't there like a draw entity? Hi, Grace Face. How you doing? There we go. We got everything working again. I think my baby's telling me it's time for me to take a break though, so we're gonna do that, and I'll get back to y'all later. But first, let's check this in, because that actually works, and this is starting to look like I want it to again.